Another day comes and goes, and another shooting happens in another city. The DOJ starts looking into the funding for some of these riot groups that seem to pop up immediately after something happens anywhere, anytime, anyhow. Twitter and Trump are back on the warpath with each other over flagging for taken out of context claims, and Biden himself is back on the campaign trail. So we'll see what happens with that. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got it's not as packed of a show as it usually is up off of this, but we've still got a fair amount of stuff to get to today, including apparently now there's been another shooting in this U.S. that involved police and a person that was apparently just walking around somewhere. So we'll talk a bit about what happened there and a couple other things from around the country here. But before we get started, head on over to freedomscoop.com. FreedomScoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We carry great shows like Call Me Ignorant, Contemporary, The Generational Gap. We also carry The Breakdown with Birkenhoff. Oh, looks like Steven had a storage war declaration. We'll talk about that. We also carry great shows like The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and The Freckles and Brit Show. So come on over there and check out all of our stuff and help us support great creators. We've got some great swag, and we can use that. We've got promo codes for every creator. So come on over and check all of that out. Pick up some of the swag and help us support great creators. All right, looks like we had a little bit of a down day on the Dow there, down almost 1% throughout the day, which, given as steady as the stock market has been over the past the past few months, we should say, all the way back to March, a steady day is always still a good day. I mean, we've seen days where it's 5% in the futures, one way or the other, 20, 30% in a day downward. So to see a steady day in the midst of everything we're seeing here with unemployment, what it is, states trying to open up, and nobody knowing what's going to happen in November, a steady day is a good day over on the Dow Jones. So let's talk about what's going to happen in the futures and what could be happening coming forward up off of all this from IBD. The market started a new uptrend, so go and subscribe to IBD, apparently. But let's see what we've got going on here. From Scott Latonin, Dow Jones futures fall, but Apple, Tesla eye new highs. Zoom Video surges 30% on earnings. Dow Jones futures were slightly lower early Tuesday, while S&P 500 futures showed modest gains and NASDAQ 100 futures easily outperformed. Stock market leaders Apple and Tesla jumped in pre-market trade Tuesday, while coronavirus stock Zoom Video soared 30% on strong earnings. Dow Jones leader Apple, sorry about that, I get a little bit of seasonal allergies going on here, gained 2.5% early Tuesday, following up on Monday's 3.4% advance into new highs. Microsoft and Walmart rose 0.75% and 2% respectively, ahead of Tuesday's potential TikTok announcement on Monday. CNBC reported that TikTok could announce a deal as soon as today, so we'll see if that becomes an American company again. We'll see what happens there. Stocks on the move in Tuesday's stock market include Tesla and Zoom Video. Tesla stock rallied as much as 6% in pre-market trade before trimming gains to about 2%, after the company said it would sell up to $5 billion in stock. Zoom Video soared 30% after the company beat earnings and sales views late on Monday. Stocks in our nearby zones include Amazon, Netflix, and Paylocity, which is a new one I haven't heard of. Dow Jones futures edged lower versus fair value, while S&P 500 futures rallied 0.25% and NASDAQ 100 futures advanced 0.9% versus fair value. Amid the coronavirus stock market rally, the tech-heavy NASDAQ is up 31.2% for the year through Monday's close. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 is up 8.3%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 0.4% year-to-date through the August 31st close. So, a couple things looking up. As much as is trending up, it's hard to see why everything went downward yesterday and why the futures are going downward, but we will see what happens throughout the day, especially seeing what's going to happen with TikTok. But once again, pay attention, because this presidential race that's happening in less than 2 months, is going to be one of the big things to watch as to what's going to happen. And I have to fake news myself because I just said less than 2 months. It's actually going to be just slightly over 2 months. But that's going to be one of the big things that's going to drag on the market and your stocks and the retirement that you have that is tied to the stocks. Let's keep going here from CNBC. Yes, we will continue without supporting. S&P 500 futures rise after the best August since the 1980s. Tech shares gain, led by Apple, Tesla, and Zoom from Fred Imbert and Yoon Lee. S&P 500 futures rose slightly in early trading on Tuesday after Wall Street notched its fifth consecutive month of gains. S&P 500 futures rose 0.2%. NASDAQ 100 futures gained 1%. Futures on the Dow pointed to a break-even opening. And do keep in mind that this is last updated an hour ago, but this was first published last night right after the markets closed. Tech shares led by Apple and Tesla were jumping in the pre-market. The stocks rose up on Monday, following stock splits that appeared to be causing investors to snap up the shares. Apple gained at 2.5% in the pre-market. Tesla added more than 6%. Shares of Zoom Video jumped more than 27% during pre-market trading after reporting another blowout quarter. The video conferencing company's revenue more than quadrupled in the fiscal second quarter compared to a year ago. The S&P 500 and the Dow just wrapped up their best August in more than 30 years. The blue chip average rallied 7.6% in August for its fifth positive month in a row, and its biggest August gain since 1984. The S&P 500 also rose for a fifth month straight, up 7%, clinching its best August since 1986. The tech-heavy NASDAQ jumped at 9.6% in August, posting its best monthly performance since 2000. So, that's what we're seeing up out of this. It was apparently a good month for all of the indices, breaking records that they've been seeing, or they haven't seen rather, since at least 20 years ago, but if not further than that, 36 years ago. So everything is looking good right now. We'll be watching this, of course. We'll be watching our own retirements and seeing what happens coming up in the election. But it's looking like we may be on track to see another good September as well. All right, let's keep going in here and start into the big news for the week. So, reading now from NBC4 out of Los Angeles. Protesters gather after a bicycle stop leads to deputy shooting, killing a man near South Los Angeles. By staff reports. More than 100 people gathered peacefully Monday night following the shooting of a man involved in a fight with Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies in the Westmont area near South LA, according to the Sheriff's Department. The shooting occurred at about 3:15 p.m. near West 109th Place and South Budlong Avenue, according to Sheriff's Deputy Juanita Navarro Suarez. The interaction between the man and deputies originated because the man was on a bicycle, in violation of vehicle codes, according to Deputy Brandon Dean of the Sheriff's Homicide Bureau. Details about the violation were not immediately available. Our suspect was holding some items of clothing in his hands, punched one of the officers in the face, Dean said, then dropped the items in his hands. The deputy noticed inside the clothing items that he dropped was a black semi-automatic handgun, at which time a deputy-involved shooting took place. Both deputies fired at the man. No deputies were injured, the department confirmed. The man, who was not identified by authorities, died at the scene. The deputies were not wearing body cameras, which is really surprising coming out of Los Angeles, by the way, so deputies were canvassing the area for security and cell phone footage to aid the department's investigation of the deadly shooting. Protesters gathered for hours Monday evening at the scene of the shooting. Some then moved to the sheriff's station on Imperial Highway, where signs outside the building were sprayed, but it says was, and vandalized. One man was arrested on suspicion of failure to disperse. So that is what we are seeing out of all of this. There are a few things that are going on with this, of course, but we don't know all the details, and nobody else does. Now, there has not been any burning or looting as far as I know from any of this. It appears that it is just some peaceful protests going on, and I do think going into the election, we may see the fact that a lot of the burning and looting is going to stop because Lamont came out and said, well, this is hurting Biden in the polls, so we need to stop doing this. But I don't know what's going to happen out of this. I wait to see what the details are off of this. Unfortunately, I think that if this doesn't fit the narrative, this is going to disappear immediately back out of the news. So that's what we're going to see up off of this. Let's keep going. I've got another one here from MSN. Reading out of the Daily Mail via MSN News, protesters gather in LA after cops shoot and kill a black man. From Luke Kenton for DailyMail.com, a black man was shot and killed by sheriff's deputies in South Los Angeles on Monday afternoon, shortly after dropping a handgun, as he punched one of the officers in the face. Police said a crowd of between 70 and 100 protesters have since gathered on the scene of the fatal shooting in Westmont to demonstrate against the lethal use of force. The man, who has not been named, was observed by deputies riding a bike down along 110th Street and Budlong Avenue when they made a U-turn in their vehicle to approach him for apparently violating an unspecified code. Lieutenant Brandon Dean said it was at this time, that the man jumped off his bike and began running northbound towards 109th Place when deputies briefly lost sight of him. The man was found shortly afterwards a few blocks away, at which time Dean says the officer attempted to make contact with him. As they approached, Dean said the man, who was clutching items of clothing in his hands, punched one of the officers in the face and then dropped the item he was carrying. The deputies noticed inside the clothing items that he dropped was a black semi-automatic handgun, Dean said during a Monday conference. So a lot of this is going to be the same things that we saw off of all of this. Looks like we do have some video. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play any of this or not. But we do have some stills for sure. Let me see if any of this will actually play. Or if this is just going to be a still photo. No, this is just going to be stills, it appears. It looks like we did have the call to action for this. Los Angeles County Sheriff's killed a black man, Dijon, on 109th and Budlong and left his body face down in the dirt. We need all hands on deck. Please get here ASAP. Labeled at 9:16 p.m. August 31st, 2020, and I believe that is going to be Pacific time. So some things to watch here, some things that are going to happen off of this. No video, it doesn't appear. So, as of right now, it appears that Los Angeles is going out looking for the camera footage from the area. Of course, once again, LA County, no body cams, which, once again, really surprises me from Los Angeles counties. But this is going to be something to watch for, see if this turns out to be something that the news considers worthy because it fits the narrative, or if this is actually going to be something that they bury. So, we will see what happens off of this, and we will move on. From the Daily Wire, Oregon's Democratic governor finally releases plan to stop violence. Sheriffs police torture. From the Daily Wire News. Oregon Democratic Governor Kate Brown decided to finally take action this week to stop the violence that has gone on in Portland for more than 3 months. Brown said that her plan was to protect free speech and end violence in Portland after a right-wing protester was shot to death. Over the weekend, following a political protest, law enforcement is reportedly investigating an Antifa and Black Lives Matter supporter in connection with the killing. Brown said that she will be asking sheriff's deputies from both Clackamas and Washington County, as well as officers from Gresham, to support Portland police in keeping the peace. KATU News reported. The governor is convening a community forum on racial justice and police reform, which will include black protest organizers and community leaders, as well as Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler. However, due to the weak support that Oregon Democrats have given to law enforcement officials, sheriffs told Brown that they would not be participating in her plan. Clackamas Sheriff Craig Roberts blasted Brown over her plan, claiming that his department would participate, saying that it's about changing policy, not adding resources. KATU News reporter Kelly Azar tweeted that Roberts will not send deputies to Portland. Washington County Sheriff Pat Garrett also indicated that he would not send deputies to assist, writing, "The lack of political support for public safety, the uncertain legal landscape, and the current volatility, combined with intense scrutiny on use of force, presents an unacceptable risk if deputies were deployed directly." The Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police also slammed the recent decisions made by Democratic elected officials in Portland, saying that their plan of abandoning law enforcement or the need for policing is not working. Over the weekend, members of our associations were approached to assist with policing in the city of Portland, the association said. Unfortunately, due to the lack of support for public safety operations, the associated liability for agencies who would be assisting in Portland, and the lack of accountability for those arrested committing criminal acts, we cannot dedicate our limited resources away from the communities we serve. So, yeah, and I wouldn't do that either. If, right now, honestly, the county that I live in, Rock County, was asked to deploy resources to Kenosha during the day while they were going out and rioting, and Rock County graciously accepted off of this. If I was the Rock County Commissioner, I might not have been so generous off of this because of everything that we're seeing off of this, and what Tony Evers said, that we just need to condemn the police even though we don't have all of the facts. If I was in the same position as the executives from these counties out in Oregon, I would probably tell Kate Brown to get bent too. For the most part, because this is ridiculous. These people are going to go down there, put their lives at risk, and possibly get punched, attacked, and have to retaliate or defend themselves in some sort of lethal fashion, and then they will be the next ones that are out there hung out in an effigy with people hoping that they get killed, with people trying to actively kill them. No fucking thank you. I'm not going to put my finest in my county into that position. It's just not going to happen. And yes, I understand the fact that people are coming from these counties in a non-official fashion to try and keep some of the peace that the police officers will not keep, but they're doing so voluntarily. They are taking this upon themselves to do so, not necessarily being asked by the state to come in and do it. So that is different from asking police officers who have a target on their back to leave their communities and go into a place like this. So yeah, good on these sheriffs. I do have a statement here from one of the sheriffs, from Sheriff Pat Garrett. Yesterday, Governor Brown issued a statement asking local law enforcement leaders to provide personnel and resources to assist the Portland Police Bureau following Saturday's shooting death that was connected to protests. As Washington County Sheriff, I commit to support the PPB through indirect ways, like analyzing risks associated with social media, air support, assisting with a specific criminal investigation. At this time, I do not plan to send deputies to work directly in Portland. PPB is a terrific partner, and I'm very sympathetic to what they are enduring. However, the lack of political support for public safety, the uncertain legal landscape, the current volatility, combined with intense scrutiny on use of force, presents an unacceptable risk if deputies were deployed directly. Lastly, I support the steps outlined in the joint media release by the Oregon State Sheriff's Association and the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police, and remain committed to work with partners and community leaders toward peace and an end to violence. Good on them. Good on them. That's all that I have to say off of that. Good on them. Keep your own people safe. So that's what we're seeing up out of Oregon here. I've got one here from the New York Post. Homeland Security Chief Chad Wolf confirms probe into funding of rioters. Man, I already feel better than I did at the very beginning of this broadcast here. You can tell that the allergy pill is starting to kick in because I'm getting a little bit more alert and I don't have as much crap at the back of my nose. From Emily Jacobs. Homeland Security Chief Chad Wolf confirmed an investigation is underway into the funding of rioting taking place amid racial justice protests and unrest nationwide. This is something I've talked to AG personally about, Wolf told Fox News, Tucker Carlson on Monday night, saying that the department is focused on targeting and investigating the head of these organizations and the individuals that are paying for these individuals to move across the country. What we know, Tucker, is that we've seen groups and individuals move from Portland to other parts of the country, he continued. After telling the story of the RNC member who saw protesters on the plane to D.C., Trump was asked by the network for details. I'll tell you sometime. It's under investigation right now. He said on Monday night, also confirming the probe. President Trump said that he believes that some very stupid rich white people are financing the unrest taking place among the racial justice protests nationwide, and I do believe I've got that article on the stack here. Yes, that's the next one we have up here. Speaking to Fox News during a wide-ranging interview Monday evening, the commander-in-chief made the remarks while discussing the violence and looting that has overrun cities like Portland, Oregon, Kenosha, Wisconsin, and elsewhere in the wake of the mass uprising against police brutality. Referencing the final night of the Republican National Convention last Thursday, where a violent group walking with demonstrators in Washington, D.C. began accosting prominent guests as they left the festivities. The president told a story from an attendee who flew to the event. And I'm going to hold off on going into that right now because that is going to be the next article. So, yeah, they're investigating. They're looking into what's causing all of this and seeing where the money goes. Follow the bouncing ball. See where all this goes, see where the money comes from. But, Antifa, it's not. Antifa's not an organized organization at all. It's just a bunch of people who happen to dress the same. They all have the same goal. They use the same name. They all happen to dress the same, but it's not organized at all. And how dare you try and suggest that this is anything other than an organic protest? Yeah, spare me. Let's keep going here. From Fox News, Trump suggests some very stupid rich people are funding the protest groups, rioters at RNC, and across the U.S. From Charles Creatz over at Fox News, President Trump told Fox News' Laura Ingraham in an exclusive interview Monday night that he believes demonstrations outside the White House on the final night of the Republican National Convention last week were bankrolled by some very stupid rich people. Trump added on the Ingraham angle that the RNC attendee had traveled to Washington on a plane from a certain city, and in the plane it was almost completely loaded with thugs wearing these dark uniforms, black uniforms, with gear, and this and that. The president declined to say who had told him the story, but promised Ingraham he would reveal it sometime. This person was coming to the Republican National Convention, and there were like 7 people on the plane with this person, and then a lot of people were on the plane to do big damage, Trump insisted. This is all happening. The president added that the people you have never heard of, the people in the dark shadows, may be facilitating a bunch of the left's activism. The money is coming from very stupid, rich people who have no idea that if their thing ever succeeded, which it won't, they'll be thrown to the wolves like you've never seen before, he said. Trump also criticized corporations who have supported the Black Lives Matter organization, saying that they were taking the easiest path. It's a very dangerous path. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization, the president said. You remember pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon. This was the first time I've heard of Black Lives Matter. I said, that's a terrible name. It's so discriminatory. It's bad for black people. It's bad for everybody. It's the worst. And all of a sudden, it becomes like, sort of, although now if you look, it's gone way down because people are tired of this stuff. What's going on? Later in the interview, Trump told Ingraham that if he wasn't president, you would have riots like you've never seen, in response to Joe Biden's assertion that rioting and violence in cities across America is a hallmark of Donald Trump's America. So it weren't Donald Trump's America to just use the expression, as I'm president, you would have riots like you had never seen. The Democrats have lost control of the radical left, Trump said. Don't forget, Biden wasn't going to come out of his basement until the election. Now he had to because the polls are so good for me. Now he had to because the polls are different. And he went on to slam Ted Wheeler, which he's been doing for weeks, and we talked about that already yesterday and Friday and Thursday. So all of that was going on with all of that. That's some of what we're seeing with Portland out of that. And in complete honesty, I actually don't think that the president is right off of this one, because the media, if this was under a Joe Biden presidency, would have buried the story of Ahmaud Arbery, of Breonna Taylor. You would have never heard of these people. Of George Floyd, you'd have never heard of that one. You'd have never heard of any of these stories, and if something had leaked and got out, the media would either quash it, or these governors would have accepted the National Guard wholeheartedly if Hillary was president. Oh, please, just send the army in and come and save us. They're rioting, they're doing everything. So no, I don't think you'd be seeing riots like you've never seen before. You'd see just a little bit so everybody could go out and get their free shit. And then Hillary would send the National Guard in and clean it all up, just like Barack Obama did. And the governors would accept it. We do have the 10th Amendment, and we do have constitutional limitations for the president to utilize the military to come in and enforce the law on U.S. soil. So no, you probably wouldn't, because a lot of the rejection of federal help is political at this point. So that's something we've got to watch as we move along down into the rest of this year. I've got another one here from the Daily Wire. Trump tells supporters to stay away from far-left extremists. Leave it to law enforcement. This comes to us from Daily Wire News. President Donald Trump told Fox News host Laura Ingraham on Monday night that he doesn't want his supporters confronting or going near the far-left extremists that are causing mayhem in Democratic-controlled cities across the U.S. But do you want your supporters to confront the left-wing protesters, or do you want them to leave it to law enforcement? Ingraham asked. No, 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 Trump responded. I want to leave it to law enforcement. When asked again if he wanted his supporters showing up to confront the far-left extremists, Trump responded, no, I don't. And then we've got a full transcript off of this. So, yeah, I mean, you can look down through the transcript. No, I don't want them. I want them to leave it to law enforcement, but my supporters are wonderful, hardworking, tremendous people, the best people, and they turn their television set and they look at Portland and they look at Kenosha before I got involved and stopped it. They look at Chicago where 78 people were shot last weekend and numerous people died, or they look at New York where violence is up by 150%. It's up by a number that nobody, and people are leaving. They're looking at all of this and they can't believe it. They can't believe it. Whether it's but you don't want them, my supporter or not. But you don't want them showing up. No, I don't. To try to. Well, it's a peaceful protest, I mean. Right. They were protesting. They weren't, it's amazing. They want to protest and they get criticized. So, I mean, yeah, that was one of the complaints. And I got into it with a guy that says that Trump is telling his people directly to go out and mow down black people in the street. And I asked him for an example of why he's doing that. And one of the things that he told me was, well, Trump has never come out and expressly said not to go out and mow people down. Well, at this point, he kind of did. And there is a difference between going out and hunting down people, like people are accusing Kyle Rittenhouse of doing, or going out and defending yourself, like what Kyle Rittenhouse did. So there's a big difference to all of this in the narrative that we're seeing from this. But yes, he has come out officially and said, no, leave everything to law enforcement. That's why he's sending it up in there. So that blows a hole in some of the narratives that we're seeing. Moving on here, we are going to read from WBNS CBS affiliate Channel 10 out of Indiana, I believe. Indiana representative proposes bill to ban convicted protesters from federal unemployment aid. Indiana Representative Jim Banks of the 3rd District of Indiana has proposed a bill that would prevent people convicted of a federal crime during a protest from receiving federal unemployment assistance during the COVID-19 pandemic. Banks introduced the Support Peaceful Protest Act on Friday. The bill would also require convicted protesters to pay for the cost of federal policing of the demonstration. The Republican congressman said it would strip voters of enhanced federal benefits like unemployment money from the CARES Act passed into law to help Americans amid the coronavirus outbreak. He said it would include arrested rioters who were caught committing crimes like acts of violence, looting, or vandalism. But the bill's text said that individuals convicted of federal offenses during protests, which could be more broad than violence, looting, or vandalism, would be held financially liable. Antifa thugs are descending on suffering communities, disrupting peaceful protests and leaving violence, looting, and vandalism in their wake. They turned Milwaukee, Seattle, and Portland into war zones, and now they're moving into the chaos to Kenosha, Wisconsin. Who knows which community is next? Banks said in a press release, due to enhanced federal benefits, taxpayers are giving wages to jobless rioters that are destroying our communities. We need to cut them off from their funding and make them feel the full financial consequences of their actions. The bill states that individuals must pay an order of restitution to the appropriate law enforcement agency in an amount that is equal to the cost of policing the activity, as well as the penalty for conviction that's in addition to the ineligibility for federal supplemental jobless compensation given during the pandemic. I like this idea on paper, but I don't think it can be introduced in practice enough to a point that it's going to be equal protection under the law, especially if somebody just gets picked up for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, somebody that's actually being a peaceful protester. And that is, at that point, if somebody gets picked up on that and gets punished for this and gets the bill sent to them for everything that's going on with this, that person, his First Amendment rights are being violated at this point. I understand the reason for this, to quell some of the violence off of this, but unfortunately, with the fact that there are peaceful protesters that are mixed in with a lot of this and aggressive policing, I don't think that there's enough to this bill, unfortunately, to make it work in practice. And that's not saying that I don't think that some of these people that are ripping these cities apart should be financially responsible. I really think that they should. But you have to balance this with the ability to protect the people who are exercising their First Amendment rights. This would result in a mess, unfortunately. I like the idea. I don't like the practice. All right, let's keep going up off of this one here from NPR. The place where they talk like this and you get sleepy when you're driving along and you hear them talk like this. They don't have a lot to say. And sometimes they say stupid stuff, but they mask it in that nice, calming, clean voice. Or they talk like this. But we've got some other stuff to talk about from them, and it's going to take too long if I try to read it like that. So, Trump defends Kenosha shooting suspect. And this led to a hashtag of defund NPR over on Twitter, which I'm sure is going to get quelled by Twitter by the time we get over there to read the trends over on Twitter here. But let's see what Alana Wise has to say about this. President Trump on Monday declined to condemn the actions of the suspected 17-year-old shooter of 3 protesters against police brutality in Kenosha, Wisconsin, claiming without evidence that it appeared the government was acting in self-defense. Claiming without evidence that it appeared the gunman was acting in self-defense. You mean other than the video that shows a dude holding a gun like this, getting ready to shoot before he got his bicep blown off, or a guy that legitimately was bringing a skateboard down on the kid's head that wound up getting shot through the heart. Without evidence, you say. Perhaps you should watch the video again. Perhaps we should watch the video again. Oh wait, we can't because Wojcicki will throw me into fucking age restriction once again. Kyle Rittenhouse has been charged with 6 criminal counts, including first-degree intentional homicide for the shooting last week that left 2 protesters dead and a 3rd injured. An investigation is ongoing, which the president also acknowledged. The incident occurred during the 3rd night of unrest following the police shootings of 29-year-old Jacob Blake, who was shot in the back multiple times at point-blank range. When asked during a Monday press briefing whether he would condemn the Illinois teen's actions, Trump defended Rittenhouse, suggesting that it appeared to him the shooter was acting in self-defense. He was trying to get away from them, I guess it looks like, Trump said, noting the incident was under investigation. I guess he was in very big trouble. The worst trouble. He probably would have been killed, Trump said. Graphic video from the chaotic scene only tell a partial story. The shooter's alleged actions have split onlookers on party lines, with Republicans painting Rittenhouse as a sort of a tragic figure, martyred patriot whose extreme actions were born of Democrat failures to quell violence on their streets. Well, I'm a Federalist, not a Republican, and that's what I see. Rioters ripping up the streets, trying to tear down businesses, burn everything down. Who knows when it escalates into killing people, especially given the fact that the guy chased the kid down and hit him in the head with a skateboard. Democrats, meanwhile, have taken a dimmer view of the situation because they're pissed because somebody had the balls to shoot back. Pointing to the president's increasingly divisive rhetoric, well, yeah, of course, they're going to blame the president for everything, and past endorsements of violence against protesters as evidence of a clear message to renegade gun owners to feel that they can act with impunity in the name of law and order. That's what the Second Amendment is there for. Trump, who has made violence in Democrat cities a key talking point against 2020 rival Joe Biden, plans to visit Kenosha on Tuesday to see the people that did such a good job for me during the protests. When asked whether he was worried about his presence, which comes against the Kenosha mayor's wishes, might inflame an already heated situation, Trump said, "Well, it would also increase enthusiasm. It could increase love and respect for our country, and that's why I'm going." The president will not, during his trip, meet with the family of Jacob Blake, the man whose shooting and subsequent paralyzing sparked the Kenosha uprisings, citing a wariness of attending the meeting that Trump said would include the family's attorney. "I thought it would be better not to do anything where there are lawyers involved. They want me to speak. They wanted to have lawyers involved, and I thought that it was inappropriate, so I didn't do that." Well, yeah, and that's absolutely the thing, too. If somebody's going to come out there and try to catch him into a word trap, which... given what the media's done forever, I wonder why somebody would suspect that. Yeah, I would be worried to come into that too. And yes, as president, if I was the president, I would love to sit down and meet with these people and console them as best as I could. But if there was a lawyer that was going to be involved with that, no. I would be getting the hell out of that as soon as I could. All right, let's keep going. We got just a few more here, and then we will do Twitter trending. I got a pair right in a row from the Daily Wire, which, once again, I try not to do, but sometimes it happens that way. Trump rips corporations for giving in to far-left BLM. They just do what's the easiest path. Which, once again, this goes back and references the talk that he had with Ingram a bit earlier that we talked about. From the Daily Wire News. During an interview on Monday night, President Trump slammed big corporations as weak for giving into Black Lives Matter, saying that the organization is Marxist and bad for the black community. Trump made the remarks when asked by Laura Ingraham about the corporations that had given enormous amounts of money in the tens of millions, or I mean hundreds of millions, to Black Lives Matter. "It's because they're weak," Trump responded. "Because they're weak people, the worst people, led by weak people, in many cases. Not all corporations are." When asked to elaborate what he meant by, or when he called them weak people, Trump responded, "They just do what's the easiest path. That's not the easy path. It's a very dangerous path. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. You remember pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon? That was the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter," Trump responded. "I said, that's a terrible name. It's also discriminatory. It's bad for black people. It's bad for everybody. And all of a sudden it becomes like, sort of, although now, you look, it's gone way down because people are tired of this stuff. What's going on? The Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter came into existence walking down the street screaming pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon. And that was about police officers. That was representing police," Trump added. "They were pigs in a blanket, like the sausages or hot dogs, fry 'em like bacon." Yeah, that's a weird way to put that, I guess. And then once again, we have full transcript up here on the Daily Wire article off of this. And I mean, yeah, we see all this as well. And it's exactly the same thing that I saw when I was walking down in Kenosha and seeing some of the boarded up windows. People painting in Black Lives Matter. Racism has no home here. Hatred has no home here. All the stuff, all the little sloganeering that they were having as they were sitting there boarding up windows, which comes to the point of, please don't burn my business down. Please, we'll do anything. We'll say anything that you want. And I do see that some of this coming out of corporate America. It's the same thing when they're giving the millions of dollars in payments to an organization like this. We're seeing a situation where they're coming up and begging, please don't hurt us, please. We'll do anything. We'll say anything. We'll put any sign up that you want us to put up. We will say anything. Just don't hurt our businesses and our property. Don't burn us down. So yes, I think that Trump is absolutely right with this. I think he's right on the money when he says that they're weak and they're just begging for favorable treatment. So now that we've gone completely through the Laura Ingraham interview, let's keep going. Little extra push of love. Rally goers assemble in downtown Kenosha to support the police. From John Brown, also over at the Daily Wire. People gathered to support police during a Sunday rally in downtown Kenosha, Wisconsin, offering a contrast to the sometimes violent demonstrations protesting police brutality that have roiled the city after Jacob Blake's shooting. As the Associated Press reported, rally-goers numbered in the scores, some of whom wore Back the Blue t-shirts, waved American or Blue Lives Matter flags, and applauded as police vehicles drove by. Jennifer Payton, 44, who attended the rally, told the AP, with the things that they face on a daily basis, they need that extra little push of love to show that they are needed. I mean, if you went into work every day and you were told that you were bad or had things thrown at you, I think that would weigh on your psyche a little bit too. Kenosha has been at the center of the national stage since the police shot Jacob Blake on August 23rd after responding to a domestic dispute paralyzing him. Since then, the town along Lake Michigan, about 40 miles south of Milwaukee, has seen protests every night. On Tuesday, authorities say a teenager armed with a rifle fatally shot 2 protesters and has been since charged with first-degree murder. President Trump announced his intention to visit the riot-torn city on Tuesday, despite the Democratic Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers' request that he reconsider. Kenosha police revealed Monday that of the 175 arrests made in connection with the recent rioting, the looting of the city, more than 100 were not Kenosha residents and represented 44 different cities, as the Daily Wire reported. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of stuff out of here, and of course, as they were talking about with the people that were going down to D.C. to riot, they were coming in from out of state to do so, coming from very, very far, and I mean, people that were being arrested in Kenosha had Washington plates on their cars. There was supposedly a bus that was full of riot gear and possibly rigged to explode. I've not seen confirmation that the bus itself was rigged to explode, but I have seen confirmation that was full of riot gear. So they were coming out to supply the rioters that were coming out of this. People coming from out of state to try and burn another city to the ground. So yes, there are a lot of things going up out of this, and if the majority of people that are arrested are from out of town, that adds a whole degree of difficulty to everything else that's going off of this, and depending on whether they came from other places in Wisconsin or if they came from out of state, like Washington or Illinois or anything else like that, that does make a lot of this a federal crime. Crossing state lines to commit a crime, specifically to commit a crime, to commit rioting, to commit unrest, that is a federal crime. So good on these counter protesters here, these rally goers that are coming out to support the police in what they're doing. Police are people. That's been something I've been stressing off the beginning, and now I will never put my full support behind the police. I saw memes of that going around Twitter and Facebook in the wake of all of this coming up as well. Will you fully support the police? No, because police are people. Some of them rock, some of them suck. The vast majority of them walk a line between the two. So no, don't support fully anybody's. Bad stuff happens. People do bad things. People get corrupted. Absolutely, people get corrupted. Take it on an individual case-by-case basis and assess the situation as going forward. That's the most that you can do in most any of these situations. But also, people are more very likely to go down the path of corrupted or bad cops if they're told that they're bad every day. I mean, you tell somebody he's bad every single day for a long time, he's going to start to believe it, and then bad stuff is going to happen as well. So that's what I have to say on that situation here. Let's keep going. I've got, and this isn't going to be the Twitter trending yet, but I had one trend that I did want to touch on just in case it disappeared before we got there, and that is the fact that they're talking about hashtag Trump stroke, because apparently CNN, and I chose not to read the article from CNN because it was just propagandistic bullshit. I read a little bit into it and I said, no, this is nothing but propaganda, but this also is nothing but propaganda here. And this particular trend is talking about, well, apparently Trump had a series of strokes when he was taking to Walter Reed in the middle of the night, and Pence was ready to take over, and everybody kept it hush-hush and quiet. Now, mind you, there is no evidence that he had a stroke at some point that we can actually see. I mean, it's just sources say, which take that as you will. But I don't think that this is necessarily people coming out and trying to say, well, Trump had a stroke and he should be, because one of the things that was pointed out was the fact that, oh, well, they're saying that Trump is unfit because he had a stroke and Biden can't string sentences together and he's had aneurysm after aneurysm, so why do that? Follow the bouncing ball, people. Follow the bouncing ball. That's something I have to tell you all the time, is follow the bouncing ball. You think for a second that they really want Joe Biden to be the president right now, especially with Kamala Harris waiting up in the wings to take the presidency. No, if they can use the precedent and say that Trump is unfit for office and 25th Amendment him out right now, coming into an election, you don't think that they're going to use that as soon as they can over Joe Biden after the election to get the appointed person in? They set this up so they can use it down the road. Follow the power, follow the money, and follow the bouncing balls. Things are never what they seem. All right, speaking of Twitter and Trump all together here, Twitter flags Trump campaign for out-of-context clip of Biden attacking himself. From Stephen Nelson over at the New York Post, Twitter on Monday flagged as manipulated an out-of-context clip of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden saying, "You won't be safe in Joe Biden's America." Biden actually uttered the words during a campaign stop in Pennsylvania, but the clip omits the fact that Biden was reading a quote to rebut the claim. Selectively edited clip. Where does that sound familiar from? The clip omits the fact. Where does that sound familiar from? I will see your "You won't be safe in Joe Biden's America" and raise you very fine people on both sides. The Trump campaign, which tweeted the video, said that people need to lighten up about their joke after Twitter attached a link to the fact-checking tweets about how the video was taken out of context. To all the triggered journalists who can't take a joke about their candidate, he shouldn't be your candidate, you should be objective. It's not our fault Joe Biden was dumb enough to say this on camera, the Trump War Room account tweeted. The Democratic candidate made the statement Monday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In context, he was arguing that he would bring social stability after months of unrest following the May killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police. Since they have no agenda or vision for a second term, Trump and Pence are running on this, and I find it fascinating. You won't be safe in Joe's America, and that's their proof. The violence we're seeing in Donald Trump's America, Biden said. The former vice president alleged Donald Trump adds fuel to every fire. But this isn't the very first time Twitter has targeted Trump, and the president has criticized the social media platforms for selectively going after him, while allowing others to put out inflammatory false information. In June, Twitter masked a tweet from Trump that said any autonomous zone outside the White House will be met with serious force. The Trump tweet was flagged with a warning by Twitter for violating a policy against abusive behavior, specifically the presence of a threat of harm against an unidentifiable group. And I've been flagged by Twitter as well, by the way. Of course, I actually kind of went out on a limb to make sure, because we figured out what the algorithmic trigger was to get it out there. And if you talked about COVID-19 and oxygen in the same sentence, then they would flag you for misinformation. Or 5G and oxygen, you would get flagged for that one too. Every time we figured out their algorithm, they sat back and changed it. But it also got flooded with a bunch of people who wanted to see the algorithm fall. So yes, they're out there and flagging this up here, trying to censor what the president has to say. And I love the fact that they bring up selectively edited clips. Like I said, very fine people on both sides. All right, just a few more here, and then we'll do some Twitter trending for the day. This is from Fox Business. Biden clarifies fracking position during Pittsburgh speech. From Megan Henney. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden said Monday he does not intend to ban fracking if he wins November election, countering repeated claims from President Trump that his opponent would destroy Pennsylvania's fracking and fossil fuel industries. Well, I'm sure he learned from Hillary not to say that they're going to put a lot of coal workers out of work, because that was probably one of the last nails in the coffin of her campaign. I'm not banning fracking, the former vice president said during a speech from Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. Let me say that again, because I don't remember if I said it already. I'm not banning fracking, no matter how many times Donald Trump lies about me. Fracking, also known as hydraulic fracturing, is a technique of extracting natural gas from the shale rock. It involves drilling a process that injects water, sand, and chemicals into the ground, fracturing rocks, and releasing the natural gas. This method is controversial and is often criticized by climate activists and Democrats because it allows industry to keep going forward without them having a say in it. During a March primary debate, Biden, when Senator Bernie Sanders spoke of his own proposal to eliminate fracking entirely, said, "So am I," later declaring, "No more, no new, no fracking." But Biden's campaign said he misspoke and that his position was unchanged. He supports banning new oil, gas, and permits, including fracking on federal land. Biden has proposed an aggressive $2 trillion plan to boost investment in clean energy and stop all carbon emissions from U.S. power plants by 2035. That would set the country on a path to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. He has proposed a worldwide ban on fossil fuel subsidies. So, I don't believe that Biden would ban fracking, and that may be an unpopular opinion, given the audience that we have going up with this. However, I do believe that there are forces behind Biden. I don't believe that Biden would be in control of the entirety of his presidency, just given his cognitive difficulties. And there is a large amount of people in the climate movement that want to get behind this, that just want to see fracking gone and done away with altogether. I don't know what would happen in a Biden presidency with fracking. I have no idea. I know that Obama, his former boss, got out of the way of fracking, and that was something that revitalized and got them their 1% growth rate for the second term. So that would be an interesting one to actually see and to pry into a little bit further to see where this would actually stand and what would come out of this. So that's something to watch. I'm sure that this is going to come up and become something out of the campaigns. All right, let's read now from ABC News. Could a Kennedy lose an election in Massachusetts? Please, 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 please. I do think, unfortunately, that the Kennedys are not progressive enough to win in Massachusetts anymore, which would be surprising. But I thought this was interesting. Did you guys ever see the roast of Dennis Leary? At the end, when Leary was going back after all of his friends at the roast, and he brought up the Lenny Clark story when Lenny Clark ran for mayor of Cambridge, and his platform was "Fuck the Kennedys." If you've never seen that video, get the DVD. It's worth it. It's like $5 on Amazon. Get the DVD. It's worth it. Watch it and watch the roast. It is hilarious. It is full of jokes that could never be told today. And yes, the story at the end of Lenny Clark running for mayor on the platform of "Fuck the Kennedys" in, I believe it was 77 when it happened, is second to none. All right, but let's see what Benjamin Siegel and Kendall Carson have to say. After nearly half a century in Congress, Senator Ed Markey was expecting the primary race of his life against Representative Joe Kennedy III, who was young and telegenic standard-bearer for the legendary political clan, who announced his challenge with a message of urgency in September of 2019. Almost a year later, Markey, 74, heads into Election Day as the frontrunner, touting his alliance with Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and his working-class roots to cast himself as the anti-establishment choice in the race against Robert Kennedy's grandson. Markey has done a very good job of, in some ways, reinventing himself and turning this around, so he's more the insurgent. Former Representative Barney Frank, a Massachusetts Democrat who has remained neutral in the primary, told ABC News. So yeah, this is without even reading the article. I called it right in the air. He's not progressive enough. And a young AOC, not a young AOC upstart, an elder AOC upstart, is going to be the progressive one to take the position instead. The race, which has divided Democrats in Washington and tested the durability of the Kennedy brand in Massachusetts, could be the first election a member of the family has ever lost in the state. Unlike some long-serving incumbents who have recently lost primaries to dynamic younger Democrats running from their left, Markey, who was the first elected to Congress before Kennedy was born, closely aligned himself with the leading progressives. That includes Suffolk County District Attorney Rachel Rollins, Ocasio-Cortez, and Senator Elizabeth Warren, who endorsed Markey before Kennedy, her former Harvard Law School student, announced his bid. By the way, Warren is not a progressive as much as they try to hammer that down into you. Warren is a rich former Harvard Republican who ran as a progressive to try and pick off votes from Joe Biden in the primary. She is not a progressive and never will be. If anything, she's a milquetoast fed sinner, but I'm still pretty sure she leans a little bit to the right. She's just thirsty for power. So, yeah, that's what we're seeing up off of this. A Kennedy could actually lose in Massachusetts, which, once again, I mean, JFK would be a Republican by today's standards. That's something you have to think about with the Kennedy family and the direction that a lot of the left-wing party in this country is going. And maybe Joe Kennedy would do better running as a Republican at this point. Who knows? But yeah, the progressive machine that's going through the Democrat Party, which is what needs to be excised from the party, and that's capital T, capital P, is going to start costing the dynamics and the dynasties of some of these families. Some of these long-standing positions. Hillary Clinton tried to run as a progressive in the general after running as a moderate in the primary, and got partially crucified for it because it was another generic Wall Street Democrat candidate that screwed over Bernie Sanders. I'm pretty sure the progressive wing is going to make Joe Biden pay at the ballot box this year, so there are some things to watch as we go into this. We're having an election here this year, folks. Something definitely to get your popcorn out and be entertained by. All right, I've got one more here, and then we will read the Twitter trending for the day. From Al Jazeera, which I don't know if I've ever read from on this show before, but this was very interesting to me. And their head cap cuts off the headline. That's interesting. All right, anyway, from Al Jazeera, Hamas has announced an end to the escalation of violence with Israel. Let's see if there's an author to this. There's not. 17 hours ago, Hamas, the Palestinian group running the besieged Gaza Strip, has announced that it has reached a Qatari-mediated deal to end the latest escalation of violence with Israel. After talks with Qatari envoy Mohammed El-Ahmadi, an understanding was reached to rein in the latest escalation and end Israeli aggression against our people, the office of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar said on Monday. There was no immediately comment by Israel. I love how they made this Israeli aggression against our people. Honestly, in this conflict, both sides suck. They're both being assholes to each other in one way or another. I'm not going to take sides on this particular one because they are both in a bitter conflict that has gone on for longer than this nation has been a nation. The Israeli army has carried out attacks on Gaza almost daily since August 6th in what it says is a response to the airborne incendiary devices and, less frequently, rockets launched into southern Israel. The fire balloons are widely seen as an attempt by Hamas to improve the terms of an informal truce under which Israel committed to easing the 13-year-old crippling blockade in return for calm. But so far Israel's response has been to tighten the blockade. It has banned Gaza fishermen from going to sea and closed its goods crossing with territory, prompting the closure of the Palestinian territory's sole power plant for the want of fuel. What Hamas says about the agreement is that it will stop incendiary balloon launches as well as what it calls its nighttime confusion operations, where groups go along the fence and throw explosives and cause disruption, said Al Jazeera's Harry Fawcett, reporting from Jerusalem. In return, it says that Israel is undertaking to go back to the pre-escalation situation, which means allowing fishermen out into the Mediterranean, easing the restrictions on goods coming in, and also presumably the restoration of fuel supplies to Gaza's only power station. So, it took the coronavirus, and they're not still back down to the fact that they're at peace. It's probably never going to happen. But, because of coronavirus, they're taking it easy at least. And once again, we're seeing more peace come up out of the Middle East. And I have to say peace very loosely in this situation, because this is one idiot crossing a border into erupting back into a full escalation once again. These people are not friendly with each other, and they probably never will be. So, we're going to take the victory where we can get it. We are seeing the two of them come down and draw down some hostilities, get things back to normal, back to where they used to be, and hopefully have some semblance of a ceasefire at some point here, until the next thing sets them off once again. And that's going to be it for the news today. And the last thing that we do on Tuesday is to read the Twitter trending here. So I've got 6 notifications already. So let's get up into the trending. So we will not read anything that is Tuesday thoughts or anything else like that. We will go and check on everything else that's trending here. Starting with... What? Okay, well, we're going to read them all. Pokemon Master Sex. You obtained the pink petal. Which one is it? Pokemon Master EX or Pokemon Master Sex? This is the Pokemon Master Sex herself. Oh, that's dirty. Finally, Pokemon Master Sex is trending. I kind of want to know where all of this came from, and I want to know if Wojcicki's going to shut this video down or at least turn it into age restricted, because there's some stuff here. But we read all the trends, so yeah, look at all the confused people. I'm confused. So apparently, Pokemon Master Sex sector is clear. Pokemon Master EX. So apparently this is Pokemon Masters EX is what the hashtag was intended to be. But of course, it's the internet. So they changed everything into everything else. Alright, September 1st is trending. That's not a Tuesday thought, so we'll actually read and see what this is. Uwu-Tae is literally just gave Jungkook a cheek squish on his birthday. I don't know what any of those words meant. But looks like we have some very, very inspirational things happening on September 1st. Some inspirational comments, some inspirational pictures, and hope for people to gain fortune throughout September. So, I hope people gain fortune through September. So, we'll see what happens with this. And apparently Green Day is going to sleep right now. So we will wake them up in 30 days. Let's keep going here. Tuesday thoughts we'll skip. Trump stroke. We looked at that one briefly. The Donald win. Ironic that the same people trying to push Trump stroke while, yeah, supporting Biden. Yeah, we talked a bit about what's going on there. Follow the bouncing ball. And at this point, the hashtag has gone into people that are ripping on Biden. But yes, we talked a bit about what went on with Walter Reed and the fact that, well, apparently a source that's unnamed said that Trump might have had a stroke or a series of mini strokes, and that's why he was at Walter Reed. And all the evidence, of course, that he had the stroke. So he's dragging his leg. Dude's 74 years old. All right. So that'll be 3. Let's skip Tuesday morning. Cory Booker is 4. Why does Trump keeps mentioning Cory Booker in the context of the Democrats are going to bring low-income housing and crime to your neighborhood? So apparently he's been ripping on Cory Booker over anti-gentrification or something. Apparently Booker is maybe on the short list to be a housing, urban, and development secretary or something in the Biden administration. I'm not sure what's going on with this or why he's bringing this up. I know this has to do with the Laura Ingraham interview that we talked about earlier on. So, yeah, Cory Booker is trending. And the Krasensteins are hiding behind one of their wives. once again in order to keep tweeting even though they're suspended. All right, and the last one that we'll read is No Simp September. Let's see what's going on with this. Happy No Simp September, a challenge where you aren't allowed to simp for any being on this earth, including fictional characters, for the whole September. So, all you guys over on Instagram, over on Twitter, that are in love with these women that barely know your name, yep, apparently you're not allowed to simp anymore. So some of you guys better slow your roll, and settle it down for the month. See if the challenge can go forward. No Simp September. Why do they keep coming up with this stuff? I don't know. But that's what we're going to see off of all of this. And that's going to be it for the day. So we will be back here later on tonight with some more gaming, considering I skipped last week because of everything that was happening in my hometown. So thank you for your patience with that and the hard time for me. Otherwise, we'll be back here tomorrow morning with more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.